At family dinner, Dad asked if my allowance was enough. When I said, "What allowance?" his face went white. Turns out, my birth mother had been sending me $200 a month for 6 years, and my adoptive mom stole every penny to fund her lifestyle. Now she's facing fraud charges, and I've cut her off completely. I'm Brandon, 18 male, and up until 3 months ago, I thought I had a pretty normal middle-class life. Decent house in the suburbs, both parents working professional jobs, comfortable but not rich. Nothing spectacular, but nothing to complain about either. Turns out my entire life was built on lies so big, they'd make a politician blush. But before we get to the main event, let me set the stage for you. My adoptive dad, Frank, 52 male, is an accountant at a mid-size firm downtown. The kind of guy who irons his khakis on Sunday nights and keeps his car maintenance records in a labeled binder. Meticulous to a fault. Never late on a bill, never missed a tax deadline, probably has his funeral planned down to the hymn selections. His idea of living dangerously is buying the name brand cereal instead of store brand. Then there's Patricia, 49 female, my adoptive mom. Real estate agent with a taste for the finer things that her commission checks couldn't quite support. Always dressed like she was showing $1 million property even when she was just running to Target. Designer bags, salon hair, those shoes that cost more than my entire wardrobe. She had this way of making everything look effortless and expensive, even though I'd later learn they were drowning in credit card debt to maintain the image. Growing up, money was always this weird tension point in our house. Not like we were poor, but there was always this undercurrent of stress about it. Patricia would come home with shopping bags, and Frank would get this tight look around his mouth. They'd have these whispered arguments in the kitchen late at night, but they maintained the facade of upper-middle-class success pretty well to the outside world. Here's what I didn't know until recently. They'd been trying to have kids for 8 years before they adopted me. Fertility treatments, specialists, the whole 9 yards. Spent over 60 grand chasing that dream before they finally gave up and went the adoption route. That financial hole they dug trying to conceive, they never really climbed out of it. My childhood was fine. Not amazing, not terrible. Patricia was involved, but always kind of distant, like she was playing the role of perfect mom, without fully committing to the character. Frank was warmer, more present. He's the one who taught me to ride a bike, helped with homework, drove me to school when I missed the bus. But here's where things get interesting. I've been working since I was 14. Started bagging groceries at the local supermarket, moved up to cashier by 15, eventually became a shift supervisor by 17. Currently pulling about 25 hours a week while finishing my senior year of high school. Every penny I earned went into my own checking account that I opened myself as soon as I turned 16 and could do it without a parent cosigner. Why? Because Patricia and Frank made it very clear that beyond the basics like food and shelter, I was on my own. Wanted new clothes? Get a job? Needed gas money? Get a job. Want to go to the movies with friends? Get a job. They framed it as teaching responsibility and preparing me for the real world. Cool. I can respect that. So I worked. By 18, I'd saved about $1,100. Not a fortune, but decent for a high school kid working part-time. I was proud of that money. Every dollar represented hours of dealing with difficult customers, closing shifts that ran past midnight, weekends spent scanning groceries instead of hanging out with friends. The thing is, I never questioned why I had to work for everything, while my parents seemed to live pretty comfortably. Frank drove a newer Lexus. Patricia had a Mercedes SUV. They'd renovated the kitchen 2 years ago, with granite countertops and custom cabinets. Redid the master bathroom last year with one of those rain shower heads and heated floors. Took a cruise to Alaska the summer before. But I was just a kid. I didn't know enough about money to realize the math didn't add up. That all changed 3 months ago at a random Tuesday dinner. We were sitting around the table eating Patricia's pot roast, which she made exactly once a month like clockwork. Frank had that tired look he always got after tax season, loosening his tie but not taking it off completely. Patricia was scrolling through her phone, probably checking property listings or Instagram. Normal weeknight dinner. Then Frank looked up from his plate and asked me out of nowhere, "Brandon, is your allowance enough? We can increase it if you need more for senior year expenses." I stopped mid-chew. What allowance? The silence that followed was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. Frank's fork froze halfway to his mouth. A piece of carrot speared on the end. Patricia's phone clattered onto her plate. She stopped chewing and just stared at me like I'd announced I was joining a cult. "What do you mean, what allowance?" Frank's voice came out strangled, like someone was squeezing his throat. I looked between them, genuinely confused. "I've never gotten an allowance. Ever. That's why I've been working at the grocery store since I was 14. To buy my own clothes, pay for gas, all that stuff. Patricia set down her fork very carefully, the way you'd set down something explosive. Honey, your father has been giving you $200 every month since you were 12. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. No, he hasn't. Frank's face had gone from normal color to white to slightly green in about 10 seconds. He pushed back from the table and walked to his office without a word. We could hear him frantically opening and closing drawers, papers rustling, the sound of file folders hitting the floor. Brandon, Patricia said carefully, using that fake calm voice people use when they're panicking inside. Your dad set up automatic transfers from his account. He showed me the bank statements. It's been 6 years. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, turned the screen toward her. Mom, look, I've got $1,100 total. That's from working 25 hours a week for the past 6 months. If I'd been getting $200 a month for 6 years, I'd have over $14,000. She studied my account balance, her frown deepening with each second. Her face did this weird thing where it tightened and released, like she was cycling through emotions too fast to settle on one. That's impossible. He's been transferring money for 6 years. I've seen the statements. Frank returned, clutching a folder. His hands were shaking as he spread bank statements across the dinner table, knocking over the salt shaker and not even caring. Look, he said, pointing at line after line of transactions with his finger trembling. $200 transfer to Brandon Peterson every single month for 6 years. Like clockwork. Never missed one. I leaned forward and looked at the account number next to each transfer. Dad, that's not my account number. The silence that followed felt like being underwater. Everything got muffled and slow. Patricia grabbed the statement, comparing it to my phone screen. Her lips moved like she was doing math in her head, checking and rechecking. Frank, she whispered, and something in her voice made my skin crawl. This account number, it's different. Frank sank into his chair like someone had pulled his plug. All the air went out of him. That's impossible. I set this up myself. I specifically requested transfers to Brandon's college fund account. The bank confirmed it. Whose account is this money going to? I asked, looking between them. Dad's face crumpled in on itself. I don't know. The next morning, Frank was on the phone with the bank before they even opened. I sat beside him in his office at 7:45 a.m., listening to him explain the situation to 3 different representatives, each one transferring him higher up the chain. Finally, a supervisor named Jennifer came on the line. Mr. Peterson, I've located the account in question. Frank put her on speaker so I could hear. And? The funds have been going to an account under the name Brandon Peterson Torres. Does that name mean anything to you, sir? Frank's face went white again. Dude was spending more time white than his normal color lately. That's not my son's legal name. Sir, according to our records, this account was opened by Patricia Peterson in 2018. She listed herself as the account holder with Brandon Peterson Torres as the beneficiary. I watched my dad's world collapse in real time. It was like watching a building implode. Patricia had been sitting at the kitchen counter pretending to read the newspaper, but she'd gone completely still. Not frozen, just unnaturally motionless, like a deer that knows the wolf is watching. That's impossible, Frank said, his voice barely working. My wife is sitting right here. Sir, I'm showing Patricia Peterson as the account holder and Brandon Peterson Torres as the beneficiary. The account was opened with your wife's signature and identification. Frank turned to look at Patricia. The expression on his face was something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not confusion. Betrayal. Pure, unfiltered betrayal. Patricia. She stood up slowly, her coffee mug trembling in her hands. I can explain, she whispered. Explain what? Frank's voice was barely audible. Patricia set down her mug and started walking toward the front door. Just walked. No rush, no panic, just this eerily calm stride. Where are you going? I called after her. She grabbed her purse and keys. I need to make a phone call. The door closed behind her. Not a slam, just a quiet click. Then her car started and pulled out of the driveway. Frank and I sat in stunned silence, listening to the sound fade away. Neither of us moved for a solid minute. That's when I noticed the manila envelope that had fallen from her purse when she grabbed it. Must have slipped out without her noticing. It was sitting there on the floor by the door, partially hidden under the coat rack. I picked it up. Heavy paper, expensive feel. The kind of envelope people use for important documents. It was addressed to Brandon Peterson Torres at an address I'd never seen before. Some apartment complex across town. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold. Legal papers I couldn't fully understand at first glance. Birth certificates, plural. And a photo that made my brain short-circuit. It was me as a baby, maybe 2 or 3 months old. But I was being held by a woman I'd never seen before. Young, maybe late teens, with dark hair and features that looked vaguely familiar in a way I couldn't place. On the back, in Patricia's handwriting, Brandon's first mother. Goodbye for now. First mother. What the hell did that mean? Dad, I said, my voice coming out weird and tight, you need to see this. He came over and I watched his face go through the same cycle of emotions mine probably had. Confusion, shock, understanding, horror. I flipped through more papers. Hospital records from my birth, but they listed my mother as Jessica Torres instead of Patricia Peterson. My father was listed as unknown. There were medical records, vaccination schedules, all dated from my first few months of life, all with a different mother's name. Dad? I whispered, holding up a document. This says I was adopted. He grabbed the paper, scanning it frantically, his eyes moving so fast I could see them darting back and forth. That's impossible. I was there when you were born. I held you in the delivery room. I cut your cord. But as we dug deeper into the envelope, the truth became undeniable. There were adoption papers dated when I was 3 months old. Medical records showing I'd lived in foster care for my first 90 days of life. Caseworker notes about a teenage mother who wanted to keep her baby but couldn't provide adequate care. And most damning of all, a letter from someone named Jessica Torres, dated just last week. My dearest Brandon, it read in handwriting that was neat but unpracticed, like someone who didn't write letters often. I know this must be confusing, but the woman you call Mom has been sending me updates about you for years. She promised me that when you turned 18, we could finally meet. The account she set up was my way of contributing to your upbringing from a distance. I've been working 2 jobs to make sure I could send that money every month, even though I make a fraction of what your adoptive father does. I love you so much, and I can't wait to finally tell you the truth about why I had to give you up. Your mother, Jessica. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the letter. 2 jobs. This woman I'd never met had been working 2 jobs to send me $200 a month. For 6 years. That was $14,400. $14,400 that I never saw because Patricia had been intercepting it. Dad, I said, my voice breaking in a way it hadn't since I was 13. Did you know I was adopted? He stared at the papers for a long time. So long I thought maybe he hadn't heard me. Then he finally whispered, yes. That one word hit harder than anything else that day. And you were okay with lying to me my entire life? I thought we were protecting you, he said, but his voice had no conviction behind it, like he was reciting something he'd told himself for years but never really believed. Your birth mother was 17, unmarried, with no way to care for a baby. We thought we were giving you a better life. By stealing money from her? The words came out sharp. Dad, this letter says she's been working 2 jobs. 2 jobs. To send me money she probably needed for herself. And Patricia just took it? For what? Frank's face crumbled. I had no idea. I thought the money was going to your college account. Patricia handled all the paperwork for the transfers. That's when I realized the full scope of what had happened. Patricia had set up an account in my name combined with my birth mother's last name, had been intercepting money that Jessica Torres, a woman who'd given me up because she couldn't afford to raise me, had been scraping together to send to me. Money she probably desperately needed for herself. When Patricia came home 3 hours later, Frank and I were sitting at the kitchen table with all the documents spread out between us. We'd organized them, made a timeline, calculated the total amount of money that should have been in that account. She took one look at the papers and sank into her chair. Didn't even try to run or make excuses. Just sat down like someone who knew the jig was up. How long have you been stealing from her? I asked. My voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes when you're so angry, you loop back around to ice-cold clarity. It's not stealing, Patricia said defensively, but her voice wavered. That money was meant for you. I've been putting it in a savings account. Then where is it? Frank demanded. Show me the account. Right now. Patricia's silence stretched uncomfortably long. You could hear the kitchen clock ticking, each second feeling like an hour. Patricia, where is the money? We needed it, she finally admitted, the words tumbling out. The house renovations. Your new car. Brandon's private school tuition before we switched him to public school. The Alaska cruise. It all came from that account. I stared at her in disbelief. You spent my birth mother's money on your renovations. On your cruise. She's not your mother, Patricia snapped. And there it was. The mask slipping. I raised you. I'm the one who stayed up when you were sick, who drove you to soccer practice, who helped you with homework. Because you took me away from the person who wanted to do those things herself, I shot back. She was a child. Patricia's voice went shrill. 17 years old with no job and no family support. We saved you from a life of poverty. Did you ask her if she wanted to be saved from me? Patricia's face went red, blotchy. You don't understand. You were a beautiful baby, and we'd been trying to have children for years. When we saw you in the foster home, we fell in love instantly. She couldn't provide for you. We could. So you decided she didn't deserve to try, I said flatly. She signed the papers, Patricia said, but her voice was getting smaller with each word. Did she have a choice? I asked. Really? A 17-year-old with no money, no support, probably scared out of her mind? With people like you telling her she wasn't good enough to be a mother? Frank spoke up then, his voice harder than I'd ever heard it. Patricia, where exactly did all that money go? Give me numbers. She listed them off with the dead voice of someone confessing to murder. $8,000 for the kitchen renovation, $4,000 for Frank's new car down payment, $3,000 for my private school tuition before they pulled me out, $2,000 for the Alaska cruise, various other expenses, clothes, dinners out, her new laptop, Christmas presents. By the time she finished, we'd accounted for about $13,000 of the $14,400. And the rest? I asked. Gone, she whispered. Credit card payments, bills, day-to-day expenses. Frank stood up, walked to his office, came back with his laptop, started pulling up bank statements, credit card statements, everything. We spent the next hour reconstructing exactly how Patricia had systematically stolen from a teenage mother who was trying to contribute to her son's life from a distance. Here's what killed me. Jessica Torres worked 2 jobs. According to her letter, she was a waitress and a hotel housekeeper. The letter mentioned she made a fraction of what Frank made, but she'd sent $200 every single month for 6 years without missing a payment. Never late, never short. That money probably meant the difference between her making rent or not, some months. And Patricia had spent it on granite countertops. I looked at Patricia, this woman who'd raised me, who I'd called mom for 18 years, and felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not betrayal, just a cold, empty recognition of who she really was. I'm going to contact Jessica, I said. Not asked, stated. You can't, Patricia said immediately. The adoption was closed. There are laws. I'm 18, I interrupted. I can contact whoever I want, and she clearly wants to meet me. Brandon, please, Patricia begged, and there were actual tears now. Let's talk about this. We can work it out. We're your family. No, I said, standing up. You're the people who raised me. There's a difference. I went to my room, closed the door, and did something I'd been too scared to do for the past 3 hours. I Googled Jessica Torres in our city, found her on social media within 5 minutes. Private profiles, but the preview pictures were enough. Same dark hair as in the photo, older now obviously, but the resemblance between us was undeniable. Same nose, same chin, same way of smiling with one corner of the mouth higher than the other. I sent her a message. Hi, I think you're my birth mother. We need to talk. She responded within 10 minutes. Brandon, is it really you? We moved to a phone call, and within the first 30 seconds of hearing her voice, something inside me just clicked into place. Like a puzzle piece I didn't know was missing, suddenly fitting perfectly into the picture. Jessica was 35 now. Had me when she was 17, gave me up at 3 months old because her parents kicked her out and she was living in her car. The adoption agency told her I'd go to a good family who'd give me opportunities she couldn't provide. They promised it was the best thing for me. She signed the papers because she believed she was doing the right thing, even though it broke her heart. But she'd always wanted to be part of my life. When I was 3, she reached out to the adoption agency, asking if there was any way to establish contact. They connected her with Patricia, who promised to send updates and photos. In return, Jessica asked if there was any way she could contribute financially. She didn't have much, but she wanted to help. That's when Patricia set up the account. Told Jessica she was putting the money aside for my college fund. Sent photos and updates every few months. Jessica thought she was helping, thought she was staying connected to her son from a distance, thought the money was going toward my future. I just wanted you to know I never stopped loving you, Jessica said, her voice breaking. I think about you every single day. I have a box of birthday cards I wrote to you every year. Christmas presents I never got to give you. I kept thinking that when you turned 18, maybe we could finally meet. We talked for 2 hours that first night. She told me about my biological grandparents who'd passed away before I was born, about my uncle who lived in Colorado, about my medical history that Patricia had always claimed she didn't have access to. Turns out she'd had access the whole time. Patricia just never bothered to ask. The next day, I told Frank I wanted to meet Jessica. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. You have every right to know where you came from. Patricia lost it. Full meltdown. Tears, shouting, threats. Said if I met with Jessica, I was betraying the family. Said Jessica would try to turn me against them. Said I was making a huge mistake. The mistake was already made, I told her coldly. 18 years ago. I'm just correcting it now. We met at a coffee shop the following weekend. Jessica brought her boyfriend Ryan, who'd been in her life for the past 8 years. The second I saw her in person, any doubt I had evaporated. We had the same walk, same hand gestures, same way of tilting our heads when we were thinking. She stood up when she saw me, and for a second we just looked at each other. Then she asked very quietly, "Can I hug you?" I nodded. And the weird thing? It didn't feel awkward or forced. It felt like coming home to a place I'd never been before, but somehow always knew existed. We spent 4 hours at that coffee shop. Jessica told me everything. About her life now. About what happened when she was 17. About all the years in between. She showed me the box of birthday cards she'd mentioned. 18 cards, one for each year, each one telling me about her life and how much she loved me and missed me. I wrote these even though I didn't know if I'd ever give them to you, she explained. It made me feel closer to you somehow. Ryan was quiet for most of the meeting, just providing support when Jessica got emotional. But toward the end, he spoke up. I want you to know, he said. Jessica's told me about you since our first date. You've always been part of her life, even when you weren't physically here. If you want to be part of our family now, we'd love that. No pressure, no expectations, just an open door. I looked between them, this woman who'd given birth to me and this man who'd accepted her past and loved her anyway, and made a decision. I'd like that, I said. The fallout at home was nuclear. Patricia completely fell apart. She started calling me at all hours, showing up at my work, sending long emails about how I was destroying our family. Frank tried to mediate at first, but eventually even he got tired of it. The breaking point came when I told them I wanted to press charges for the stolen money. Not for me, for Jessica. That money was sent to me, yeah, but it was taken from her. She was the real victim here. Frank immediately agreed. She deserves to be compensated for what was taken from her. Patricia's response was to hire a lawyer, claim the money was a gift that she'd managed on my behalf. Her lawyer was this slick guy who talked a lot about technicalities and statutes of limitations. Said that since the account was in Patricia's name, the money was technically hers to manage. That's when Frank did something I didn't expect. He called his own lawyer and filed for divorce. Not legal separation, full divorce. And he requested a full forensic audit of their joint finances. If she could lie to you about this, he told me, what else has she lied about? The audit revealed what we'd suspected. Patricia had been hiding money for years. She had credit cards Frank didn't know about, had taken out a second mortgage on the house without telling him, had loans in both their names that he'd never signed for. The adoption money was just the tip of the iceberg. Here's where it gets good, though. Frank's lawyer discovered that Patricia had forged his signature on multiple financial documents over the years. Turns out identity theft and fraud don't have a statute of limitations when it involves ongoing criminal activity. The district attorney got involved. At first, they weren't interested. Family financial disputes are messy, and they usually try to stay out of them. But when Frank's lawyer presented evidence of systematic fraud over multiple years, forged signatures on loan documents, and the theft from Jessica, they changed their tune. Patricia was charged with multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and financial exploitation. The fact that she'd stolen from a teenage mother trying to support her child, that didn't play well in court. At all. The trial took 8 months. I was there for most of it, sitting next to Jessica and Ryan, watching Patricia try to play the victim, claiming she'd only wanted to give me a better life, watching the jury's faces as they heard about Jessica working 2 jobs to send money she could barely afford, money that went toward kitchen renovations and luxury cruises. Patricia was convicted on 6 counts of fraud and 2 counts of identity theft. The judge, a woman in her 60s who did not mess around, sentenced her to 18 months in prison and ordered full restitution to Jessica. Not just the $14,000, but additional damages for emotional distress and lost investment opportunities. The total came to $32,000. You took advantage of a young mother's love for her child, the judge said during sentencing. You exploited her desire to stay connected to her son, and you did it for purely selfish reasons. The court finds your actions particularly egregious given the vulnerability of your victim. Patricia started crying. Her lawyer asked for leniency, citing her age, her lack of prior criminal record, her contributions to the community through her work. The judge wasn't having any of it. Mrs. Peterson, you presented yourself as a pillar of the community while systematically defrauding a vulnerable young mother. You forged documents, committed identity theft, and showed no remorse until you were caught. Your actions were calculated and sustained over many years. This was not a momentary lapse in judgment, but a pattern of criminal behavior. The judge paused, looking directly at Patricia. Perhaps time in prison will teach you the value of honesty and the consequences of your actions. Your sentence reflects not just the financial harm you caused, but the profound emotional damage to multiple victims. 18 months. Patricia served 14 with good behavior. Got out last month, actually. Hasn't tried to contact me once, which is probably the smartest thing she's done in years. But here's the thing about consequences. They don't end when the prison sentence does. Patricia's real estate license was permanently revoked. No agency would touch her with a 10-foot pole after the publicity from the trial. The local newspaper ran the story, small-town gossip being what it is, and her reputation was completely destroyed. She tried to get hired at various retail stores, but background checks kept coming back with fraud convictions. Finally got a job at a dollar store stocking shelves overnight. Makes about $11 an hour. Lives in a studio apartment in the worst part of town. Drives a 15-year-old sedan that breaks down constantly. Her friends all disappeared. The country club crowd she used to schmooze with, gone. The other real estate agents she'd worked with for years wanted nothing to do with her. Even her own sister stopped returning her calls after the conviction. Frank told me she showed up at his office once, about 6 months after she got out of prison. Tried to talk to him, said she wanted to apologize, maybe work things out. He had security escort her out. Didn't even let her finish her sentence. Some bridges, he told me later, you don't just burn. You napalm them and salt the earth so nothing ever grows there again. Frank and I maintained our relationship throughout everything. He moved into an apartment after the divorce, and we do dinner once a week. He's been to Jessica's house a few times. Awkward at first, but they found a way to be civil to each other. They'll never be friends, but they can exist in the same room for my sake. I owe her an apology I can never fully give, Frank told me once. I believed Patricia when she said Jessica didn't want contact. I should have questioned it, should have verified, but I trusted my wife. You couldn't have known, I replied. That's the thing, he said. I should have known. There were signs I ignored because it was easier than confronting the truth. I moved in with Jessica and Ryan the summer after graduation. Living with them was like discovering a missing piece of myself I hadn't known was lost. We had the same sleep schedule, same taste in music, same way of organizing our thoughts. Jessica taught me to cook her grandmother's recipes, my great-grandmother's recipes. She showed me photo albums full of relatives who shared my features and mannerisms. For the first time in my life, I understood where I came from. Jessica had a 2-bedroom apartment in a modest complex across town. Nothing fancy, but it was clean and comfortable, and felt more like home than Patricia's showcase house ever had. Ryan worked as a mechanic at a local shop. Solid, honest work that kept food on the table and bills paid. They weren't rich by any means, but they managed their money carefully and lived within their means. The contrast with Patricia's lifestyle couldn't have been more stark. Jessica and Ryan bought store-brand groceries, drove paid-off vehicles, wore clothes until they wore out. No pretense, no keeping up with anyone. Just simple, honest living. My uncle, Jessica's younger brother Tyler, lived in Colorado with his wife and 3 kids. They drove out to meet me that first summer, and it was surreal seeing my cousins who had my eyes, my hands, my laugh. Tyler pulled me aside on the second day of their visit. Your mom never stopped talking about you, he said. Every birthday, every Christmas, every holiday, she'd get quiet and we'd know she was thinking about you, wondering what you looked like, what you were doing, if you were happy. It nearly destroyed her when she had to give you up. He showed me photos from when Jessica was pregnant with me. 17 years old, still in high school, trying to hide her growing belly under oversized hoodies. Photos of her in the hospital after I was born, holding me for those first 3 months before the adoption was finalized. The look on her face in those pictures, pure love mixed with absolute heartbreak. She had to work 2 part-time jobs to afford the studio apartment they let her keep me in for those 90 days, Tyler explained. Was going to drop out of school to work full-time, but social services told her she needed to finish high school if she wanted to keep custody. So she was juggling school, 2 jobs, and a newborn baby, all at 17. What happened? I asked. Exhaustion. She collapsed at work one day, and they sent social services to check on you. Found her sleeping while you were crying because she'd literally worked herself past the point of consciousness. They said she was an unfit mother and that you deserved better. Gave her the option to place you for adoption voluntarily or have you taken by force. My throat tightened. She didn't have a choice. Not really. They made her believe she was doing the right thing, that you'd have opportunities with an adoptive family that she couldn't provide. And maybe that was true. Frank did provide for you financially, But Jessica could have given you something Patricia never did. What's that? Truth. That conversation changed how I viewed everything. Patricia hadn't just stolen money. She'd stolen the narrative of my own life, made herself the hero, and Jessica the irresponsible teen who'd given up her baby without a fight. But the reality was, Jessica had fought, had worked herself to collapse trying to keep me, had signed those adoption papers believing she was giving me a better life, then spent the next 18 years trying to stay connected in whatever small way Patricia would allow. That fall, I started at the local state university, majoring in social work. Decided I wanted to help other families avoid what we went through. Jessica was thrilled. Ryan helped me move into the dorms, and both of them showed up to parents' weekend like it was the most natural thing in the world. Frank came too. Didn't coordinate with Jessica and Ryan, but somehow they all ended up at the same campus coffee shop at the same time. It was awkward for about 5 minutes. Then Ryan broke the ice by asking Frank about his work, and suddenly they were having an actual conversation. "Your son's lucky to have 3 parents who care about him," Ryan said at one point. "2 parents," Frank corrected quietly. Patricia lost that right when she decided lying was more important than honesty. Now I'm halfway through my sophomore year. Jessica and I talk every day. She comes to my games, my presentations, every event she can make. Ryan's become like a stepfather to me. Steady, supportive, never trying to replace Frank, but carving out his own space in my life. I've met my biological uncle and his family. Spend holidays with them. Jessica's cousin hosted Thanksgiving last year, and there were like 30 people there, all wanting to meet me and hear my story. It was overwhelming, but in the best way. The money Jessica was awarded from the restitution, she refused to keep it, put every penny into a college fund for me, and an account for future grandchildren she hopes to have someday. "This money was always meant for you," she said. "It's finally going where it should have gone in the first place." Frank set up a scholarship at my old high school for students from single-parent homes. His way of making amends, I guess. It's funded partly by his own money and partly by what he recovered from the divorce settlement. The scholarship is called the Jessica Torres Memorial Fund, not because Jessica's dead, but because he wanted to memorialize the sacrifice she made as a young mother. Looking back, I realized that dinner conversation about the allowance was the moment my real life began. Everything before that was built on lies, no matter how well-intentioned. Sure, Patricia kept me fed and housed and educated, but she also stole from a woman who had nothing. She lied to everyone around her. She prioritized her image and comfort over basic human decency. Jessica likes to joke that she was paying my allowance all along. I just never got to spend it. But now I'm spending it on becoming exactly who I'm meant to be. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.